You arrive on an island in the middle of nowhere. Not a single tree in sight, but instead, gigantic stone statues litter the bare, treeless island. The native people are huddled together, starving inside caves because food is scarce. Every tree was cut down, sharp tools are all over the island, and only 4 old canoes float in the water nearby. This was the scene described when Captain Cook arrived on the island. But did this really happen? This is the story of Easter Island. Polynesian seafarers first arrived between 400 to 900 AD on canoes and fully settled on Easter Island by 1200 AD. The people on Easter Island were called the Rapa Nui. As the population slowly grew, stone statues were built, and so forests had to be cleared for the transportation of stone and construction of shelter. According to the popular historical narrative, as time went on, the deforestation of trees slowly grew to have consequential environmental effects, such as no habitat for birds, erosion, less firewood, and the ecosystem slowly breaking down. These environmental effects led to no food for the island population. According to popular historical narrative, the island spiraled into chaos and resorted to tribes fighting for food and even cannibalism. However, recent archaeological research is uncovering a new history of Easter Island. The lack of trees actually can be traced to the rats who also lived on the island. These rats ate the roots of the trees, eating a lot of the trees there. With no natural predators, the rat population spiraled out of control and destroyed many of the trees. In fact, archaeologists found that 60% of bones found on the island's ancient garbage patches were the remains of rats. With nothing else much available on the isolated island, the Rapa Nui ate the rats as their primary food source. Although there were less birds and coconuts due to the lack of trees, the Rapa Nui ate what they had, rat meat and farmed vegetables. This simple diet adequately fed the Rapa Nui, and evidence shows that the Rapa Nui had enough to eat because Dutch explorer Jacob Roggeveen wrote that the islanders didn't want food, but instead European hats. Previously, many had thought this food supply would not be enough to feed the entire population because of the assumption that a very large population is needed for the transportation of these heavy stone statues. However, recent evidence shows that Easter Island did not require many people to move the statues. Instead, they used innovative ways to slide the statue down the island. The Rapa Nui would dig deep holes and then slide the big rocks into these holes as there were a natural slope on the island. Researchers previously had assumed that the Rapa Nui people had cut down many trees and used logs to roll the rocks into place. This method would have required many people, but with the new discovery of sliding stone statues into holes, it shows that a large population was not necessary on the island. So with the evidence that the population was quite modest and the Rapa Nui were able to adequately feed themselves, what caused the assumption that there was internal fighting due to a lack of resources? Researchers assumed that evidence for internal fighting were the spearheads littered across the island, but these spearhead-looking weapons found on the island were actually parts of tools most likely used for digging or ritual purposes, according to various studies conducted by archaeologists. Furthermore, the rate of injury was just 2.5% for the human remains found, and of the 2.5%, many of those injuries proved to be healing. One thing is for sure, though. Population levels on the island went diving down after the first European contact in 1722. So what caused this? It is highly likely that Dutch explorer Jacob Roggeveen and his crew spread smallpox and other European diseases to the natives on the island. Considering it was estimated that 95% of Native American population died due to European diseases, it is highly likely it also happened on Easter Island. On top of this, Europeans conducted slave raids on Easter Island to the point where the native population numbered to only 111 people in 1877. So when we look back at the sad history of Easter Island, the native inhabitants should not be blamed by the environmental mismanagement narrative, but instead we need to recognize the historic injustices the Rapa Nui suffered. Easter Island should be remembered as a story of sculptural achievement and a well-adapted civilization that sadly fell to the atrocities of disease and slavery.